Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Tuesday, September 19th. Man, the month's just flying by. So, yeah, we had another down day today. I looked up the numbers. I want to go over this with you because we are now the last 3 days. That means yesterday, Friday, and last Thursday. Those are 3 days of net drain, fiscal drain of 59 billion. And remember, it would have been a lot higher, but Friday we had actually only a net drain of 4 billion because of that 50 billion transfer. And I spoke about that yesterday. What was that? Because that came as a total surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that. What was that? I had to look into that. I had people emailing me. There was a footnote on the daily treasury statement. That was an intra-governmental transfer. I talked about this yesterday. It was basically like the treasury was reimbursing, I think what it was, the treasury was reimbursing the Federal Finance Bank. I didn't even know that thing existed. Apparently that thing was created in the early 70s. And that is a finance unit within the government that basically can lend or extend credit to certain agencies. And this all had to do with the failure of First Republic, whenever that happened. I think, I don't know, was it back in March or April or something? I forget. You had Silicon Valley Bank, remember? Then you had First Republic. I talked about this yesterday. Everybody was going crazy. They were losing their minds. Oh, this is horrible. It's another, Lehman moment, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can see how people get hysterical. All the time they get freaking hysterical. I said, calm down. Everybody cool down. You got very strong fiscal flows. Everything was going to be okay. People just get hysterical, man. So anyway, that transfer, being that it was not a transfer into the economy, it was not a transfer into the non-government, like, for example, a Social Security payment, people get checks, or even an interest transfer where individuals or institutions get money from the government. This was just like it was the Treasury transferring 50 billion to an agency, the Federal Finance Bank. So if you take that out, if you adjust for that, it really wasn't a 59 billion net drain. It was more like 109 billion net drain, okay? The tax drain is still having an effect. I don't want you to think it's not having an effect because the numbers in the daily treasury statement make it seem that way. You have to know where these transfers are going to. Okay, I explained that in my course, Understanding the Daily Treasury Statement, how, like, for example, I subtract out things like public debt redemptions, public debt cash issues, because that's just an asset swap, okay? So same thing here. But again, this was the first time I ever heard about the Federal Finance Bank. Not that it makes any difference. I just had to understand what that transfer was all about, because all of a sudden, boom, 50 billion shows up. I'm like, whoa. That's like an interest payment, a quarterly interest payment. So just to make a long story short, we are still under the tax drain effect, and so it's not surprising to see the market down today. Tomorrow, guess what? That's the Fed meeting, or the conclusion of the Fed meeting. And there won't be, I don't think there's going to be any interest rate increase, because Fed fund futures now are saying 98% probability of no rate hike. And as I've pointed out to you guys a million times, the Powell Fed, the Jerome Powell Fed, what does he do? He only follows what the market says. And I've gone over, I don't know how many times, how ridiculous that is for a monopolist to be asking around market participants, hey, what should we do? What should we do? That's just pure idiocy. And unfortunately, the idiocy has had a negative impact on a lot of us because the Fed has been raising interest rates in an effort to, squash inflation, which is the complete opposite strategy of what it needs to do, okay? Because rate hikes or price hikes, the cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. So you raise interest rates, you're effectively raising the general price level. And this is why I have said in the past that the only true monopolist central bank, at least up until now, is the Bank of Japan, because the Bank of Japan did not cave into, the critics and the people who are demanding rate hikes, idiots like Lawrence Summers, demanding rate hikes to fight quote unquote inflation. The Bank of Japan has held steady. It has a negative rate. And that's how come you didn't see rates skyrocket to the moon in Japan. I mean, again, I don't know how many times I got to repeat this. I certainly don't have to repeat it for you guys because I know you guys understand. But if rate hikes were the answer to inflation, I mean, you wouldn't see runaway inflation, hyperinflation in Argentina where the rate is like 100%. And every time they raise the rates, the inflation rate just keeps going up. Or you wouldn't see inflation in Turkey where every time they raise the interest rate, the inflation rate keeps going up. I mean, the examples are out there. And again, the opposite of that example is the Bank of Japan, where they kept rates negative, actually, not even zero, they're negative. And negative is that is a net drain. And inflation was very mild, and that is even in a situation such as Japan, where it is completely a net importer of energy, of oil. Remember, they shut off their nuclear reactors after the Fukushima, when was that, in 2011 or 2012? And they haven't been turned back on since. So, I mean, it's not surprising to me that the Powell Fed just follows the market, because it's the same thing with their policy. But here's the thing, and I said this yesterday, I don't think tomorrow after the meeting, remember Powell holds a press conference, and I don't think we're going to see any change whatsoever in his tone, which is still going to be hawkish. He's going to be hawkish because they're going to be looking at oil prices. They're going to be looking at gasoline prices. And he's going to want to talk tough about that. And so I think the market's going to come down further. Speaking of oil and gasoline, how's that $65 price cap that the West tried to put on oil to, quote unquote, crush, Russian income? I get a kick out of, there are a lot of people out there, I see them on Twitter all the time saying, we gotta shut down Russia's ability to finance its war in Ukraine. I mean, this is the craziest, dumbest thing I ever heard. First of all, Russia pays its soldiers, it pays its military. Russia's been shut off completely from the ability to acquire dollars. It doesn't even want dollars. It sold all of its dollar holdings. It owns no treasuries whatsoever. And so these people who are still talking about, we got to shut off Russia's ability to finance. Russia finances its war with rubles. Russia has the resources, the energy resources, the manpower, the natural resources, the manufacturing ability, at least related to armaments and war and that kind of stuff. It's not, I mean, I read these things from people saying, we got to shut down that's never been applicable to the situation. I mean, Russia could continue to prosecute this war until it runs out of people. And it's got a lot more people than Ukraine, so it has nothing to do. So anyway, getting back to this oil, this was a stupid idea by the West. Again, all of these things. I saw a video the other day of on YouTube, a Russian woman who makes these YouTube videos, and she goes around to the supermarket. She was in a supermarket. Let me tell you something, folks. Shelves were completely filled up. It was like going into, I don't know, what, just Whole Foods or a Walmart Supercenter or something like that. Like shelves completely filled up with goods. Prices way, way, way below what Americans pay. Like a loaf of bread, 25 cents. You know, a 16-ounce bag of coffee for like $4. I mean, everything was cheaper. So who lost in this whole situation with these sanctions? Meanwhile, gasoline here in Los Angeles is hitting $6 a gallon. Who lost? This was a stupid, idiotic policy that only backfired on Americans. Meanwhile, you know, Biden gives $700 to the victims of the Maui fires, people who lost everything, destroyed. They got a $700 check, but he's sending, how much did we send to Ukraine so far? 150, 200 billion? And Zelensky's in New York right now at this sham, ridiculous meeting of the United Nations General Security Council. I mean, they have it every year. I'm glad I'm not in New York City anymore. First of all, it's really become really bad. It's a dump. It's terrible. Zelensky's there. Meanwhile, two of the most important members of the Permanent Security Council, that's China and Russia, they didn't even show up. The United States has effectively turned the United Nations into a branch of the U.S. State Department, okay? It is no longer a United Nations where countries get together and they debate and they try to formulate a policy which is effective and inclusive for everybody and peace and this and that. No, it is a branch of the U.S. State Department. How can you have a meeting and claim it to be legitimate when two of the most powerful members don't even decide to show up because of the U.S. position on so many things? That they basically said, you know what, this is not worth our time. We're just going to show up here and be vilified and attacked. There's not going to be any dialogue. There was never any dialogue for a long time. You know, I remember a time when, what was this guy's name from Venezuela? Victor Chavez, was that it? And he used to come to the UN in New York, and people would say, have this guy arrested, because he would talk openly. When he gave a speech, he would talk very openly, and he was highly critical of the United States and its policies. But you know what? It's all about dialogue. It's all about, free speech. Let the guy come. Let him express his opinion. You may not like it, but let it happen. That's what a body like the United Nations should be. And I don't want to veer off into a political thing here. I feel like I am doing this right now. But that was the whole purpose behind the United Nations. To create a body where countries were represented, where they were able to air their grievances, where policy could be implemented for the good of all, where there could be a directive for peace globally. It's not the case anymore. It's a sham, it's ridiculous, and at this point they ought to just shut it down. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say on this. As far as the fiscal drain is concerned, these things tend to last a few weeks. I gave you the timetable. You're basically going to see these things bottom out or stabilize around mid-November. And this is why you have this sort of seasonal effect in the markets where it's negative this time of year. We got this tax drain now. We got another individual tax drain coming up on October 15th. I mean, you really don't get into a positive environment, a positive flow environment until November 15th when you have a quarterly interest payment. I mean, I've been laying all this stuff out and, people say, well, the daily treasury statement is 1 day behind. Oh, that's terrible. I mean, that's basically, in today's environment, in what most, I should say, in what all mainstream economists look at, they're at least 30 days behind, if not further, if not a quarter, if not a year. I mean, I'm giving you something, and it's not even the fact that it's 1 day behind. I'm giving you the forward stuff because, like I said a million times, this stuff is all on a schedule. We know when these payments are going to be made. We know when these drains are going to happen. We know when these transfers are going to happen. We know what the daily flows look like because they don't really fluctuate that much. The only time they could really fluctuate is when Congress creates a new budget, and if that new budget has either more spending or less spending. That's it. And the budget is a public thing. It's debated in public. There are bills both in the House and the Senate, and that they have to be agreed upon by both bodies of Congress, and then the president has to sign it, and then every media outlet, bullet points exactly what's in it. So it's not like it's some secret. We know what these things are going to be. And it's just, for me, it's funny when I see like the media or pundits saying, oh, it must be this thing, which, they're like speculating on some crazy outside force or item or development that, it must be due to this. No, it's not. We know what it is. It's right there. It's all written down. It's all proposed. It's all voted on. The dates are known in advance. That's how come I could tell you that this bull market is not going to end, because the spending levels, like I've said in the past, are 40-50% higher than what they were under Trump. We're still running deficits 1.6, 1.7 trillion. That's an addition. The 1.7 trillion, the way to think about that is don't talk about it as a deficit. It's a deficit for the government, but it's not something that the government, it creates a difficulty for the government to operate. But what it really is, instead of saying, oh, look at the deficit, you should say this to your friends and your colleagues, say, no, look at the net transfer to the non-government, to us. Because if the deficit is 1.7 trillion, by definition, that means 1.7 trillion has been added to the financial balances of the non-government. That's us. That's the economy as a whole, globally. So don't go around talking about the deficit. And when people talk about the deficit, correct them and say, well, that's only one side of the equation. That's a deficit for the government, which presents no difficulty to the government whatsoever. It's a sovereign issuer of its own money, but that is a transfer to us. What's so bad about that? Nothing. I'll tell you what's bad. If the government decided to take that away, that's literally money out of your pocket. That's Uncle Sam sticking his hand in your pocket and taking that money away. That's Uncle Sam going into your bank account and taking that money away. And believe it or not, that's what people argue for. They want that. They don't understand that that's what that is. But when you hear people say, spending too much money, we got to balance the budget. Literally what they're saying is, come into my bank account and take my money away and bring it over to the government side, which has the ability to issue any amount of money that it wants. But it needs our money for some reason. No, it's not. I mean, it's preposterous. It's idiotic. But what are you going to do? People are, a lot of people just don't want to learn. They don't want to understand. They want to stay in the dark here. I'm in the dark here. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Nothing to get worried about. This is a good thing. Corrections are a very good thing. View them as exactly what I said, as a good thing. Don't freak out. Don't panic like some kind of weak, highly emotional person. Is that what you are? Like a weak, highly emotional person? Don't be that way. Anyway, that's it. Don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Learn something, folks. I never stop learning. I never stop doing. Buy that course, Understanding the Daily Treasury Statement. You could parse through these numbers yourself. It's a free resource every day by the government. Understand this shit. Learn something. Don't be in the dark. See you tomorrow. Bye.